I still remember the exact moment when everything in my life started to feel wrong. It was not the night I found the emails, nor the day I first noticed the way she looked at her phone and smiled in a way she no longer smiled at me. It was a smaller moment, buried inside an ordinary evening, that carved itself into my memory like a wound that never heals. She laughed at something on her screen, a soft, private laugh, and when I asked her what it was, she tilted the phone slightly away from me, as if protecting a secret. That simple movement stayed with me. Because that was when I knew, deep down, that something was waiting for me in the shadows of our marriage. Something I could not yet name. 3 questions began to haunt me from that night onward. Questions that would eventually tear my heart apart. Why did she have a sudden reason to visit Paris when her company never mentioned international travel before? Why did my best friend, the man I trusted more than anyone outside my family, start avoiding me just as her behavior changed? And why, in the middle of all this, did I find a hidden folder on our home computer that was locked with a password she never shared with me? At that time, these were only passing curiosities. I tried to silence them by telling myself I was overthinking, that I was being paranoid, that love should not be poisoned by suspicion. But love does not erase patterns. Love only delays the moment you admit the truth. And the truth has a way of clawing through every lie, every excuse, every fragile wall you build to protect yourself. Our marriage had always looked strong from the outside. We were the couple that others admired, the ones who smiled in photographs, who held hands at gatherings, who celebrated anniversaries with dinners and surprise gifts. But photographs are dangerous. They capture only the surface. They freeze a smile while ignoring the storm behind the lips. And inside our home, the storm was already gathering. She began spending more nights in the office. At least that is what she told me. Deadlines, she would say with a tired sigh. The clients are impossible this month. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Trust is not just about love, it is about survival. When you trust someone, you give them the power to blind you. And I had given her that power completely. But then came the email. The first one I stumbled upon was not even suspicious at first glance. It was a travel confirmation from an airline. Paris, business class, 1 passenger. My wife. I stared at the screen for minutes, my heart pounding. I remembered her telling me about an upcoming project, but she had never mentioned travel, let alone Paris. I asked her that night casually if work was busy, and she said yes, the usual chaos, nothing new. She did not mention the trip. That silence cut deeper than the email itself. From that night forward, my world became a quiet investigation. I started noticing things I had ignored before. The way she guarded her phone, the sudden change in her perfume, the new lingerie receipts hidden inside shopping bags. None of them were proof by themselves. Together, they were pieces of a puzzle that terrified me to solve. And then there was my best friend, Daniel. He had been my brother in every way but blood. We had grown up together, shared secrets, stood as each other's best man at our weddings. Yet lately, his calls became shorter. His visits less frequent. His eyes seemed to carry a weight whenever he looked at me, as though he wanted to confess something but could not. I brushed it aside at first, thinking life had just gotten busy. But when your heart is already suspicious, every silence screams louder than words. I told myself I would not snoop. That if the truth wanted to be known, it would show itself. But temptation is a dangerous whisper. And one night, when she left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while she took a shower, temptation won. There it was, her inbox. Dozens of emails. At first, just work-related, numbers, contracts, deadlines. But then, buried deeper, I found the folder that was not meant for me. It was not locked this time, not on the laptop. It was labeled simply, Paris. My hand trembled as I clicked it open. Inside were emails. Not professional. Personal. Words that cut me open like blades. They were not written to me. They were written to someone else. Someone she called my light in the city of lights. She wrote about missing his touch, about counting days until Paris, about how alive he made her feel compared to the dull weight of her life back home. I could barely breathe as I read line after line. Each word felt like betrayal inked in fire. The room spun. The world shrank. My entire marriage, every kiss, every promise, every whispered goodnight, it all collapsed into a single question. Who was he? I scrolled faster, my eyes burning, until I found a clue. She mentioned how it was difficult to see him because of our connection to him. My stomach turned to ice. What connection? And then, buried in one email, the truth clawed out in fragments. She wrote his name. Daniel. My best friend. My brother. The betrayal was so deep that I could not even cry. I just sat there, staring at the screen, the cursor blinking as if mocking me, daring me to accept what I had just learned. My wife, the woman I built my life with, was planning a secret trip to Paris with my best friend. I heard the water shut off in the bathroom. Her footsteps echoed closer. I quickly closed the laptop, my heart hammering, my body frozen between rage and disbelief. She walked into the kitchen with a towel around her hair, smiling faintly as if nothing had happened. As if my world had not just been destroyed. I wanted to scream. I wanted to confront her. But something stopped me. Perhaps it was shock. Perhaps it was the need to know more. Confrontation would end the chance to uncover everything. And so I swallowed my pain and pretended nothing had changed. That night, lying beside her in bed, I felt like I was next to a stranger. She breathed evenly, peacefully, while my chest ached with silent thunder. I stared at the ceiling, asking myself if love was ever real, or if betrayal had always been hiding, waiting for the right moment to strike. The next day, I began watching. Quietly. Carefully. Her phone vibrated, and she tilted it away. She smiled at messages I would never read. She told me she had meetings that lasted late into the evening. And through it all, Daniel remained distant, his silence like a confession without words. I tried to test her. I asked casually about Paris, if she ever wanted to visit. She froze for half a second too long before laughing it off, saying maybe one day, when work calmed down. Lies rolled off her tongue with the ease of someone who had practiced them. My heart was not just breaking, it was rotting from the inside. Trust is not something that shatters all at once. It decays slowly, painfully, until there is nothing left but suspicion and hurt. But I told myself I needed proof. I needed more than emails, more than suspicion, more than the ache in my chest. I needed undeniable truth. So I followed her one evening. She said she was going to the office. I waited 15 minutes and then left quietly. My car stayed far behind hers as she drove, not toward her office, but toward a hotel on the other side of town. I parked where she could not see me and watched as she stepped out of her car, her eyes scanning the lot. She walked inside. My pulse thundered in my ears. Minutes later, another car pulled in. Daniel. He entered the same hotel. The world collapsed again. I gripped the steering wheel, my hands shaking with rage and sorrow. Everything inside me screamed to storm inside, to drag them out, to make the truth spill under the harsh light of reality. But something held me back again. Maybe it was fear of what I would see. Maybe it was the small, dying part of me that still prayed it was not true. I sat there for hours, until they both left. She drove home separately. He disappeared into the night. When I returned home later, she was already in bed, pretending to be asleep. Her phone glowed faintly on the nightstand. I stared at her, wondering how long she had been lying to me, how many nights had been stolen, how many memories poisoned. That was when I realized, this was not just an affair. This was a war on my soul. The days that followed blurred together, but the pain did not fade. It grew sharper, more relentless, like a knife twisting in my chest with every smile she faked, with every excuse she rehearsed. I became an actor in my own home, pretending not to notice, pretending not to know, pretending that my wife was not living a double life. Yet the more I watched her, the more my suspicions became unbearable truths. She checked her phone in the middle of the night. She whispered into it in the bathroom with the water running. She erased call logs, deleted messages, but shadows of her lies always remained. And still, I played along, waiting, watching, collecting the fragments of betrayal that would soon form a picture too clear to deny. One evening, while she was in the shower again, I returned to her laptop. This time I knew exactly where to look. The folder was there, the same one. Paris. But something new had appeared. Another subfolder. Labeled with a date. A date that was only 2 weeks away. My pulse quickened as I opened it. Inside were flight details, hotel reservations, confirmations for restaurants. It was not a work trip. It was an escape. A romantic getaway with Daniel, planned carefully behind my back. My wife and my best friend were running away to the city of lights, the city that she called her second life. I felt sick. The first open question that haunted me was now answered. The Paris trip was not for business. It was not for her company. It was for him. She was not just betraying me in stolen nights at a local hotel. She was building an entire future that did not include me. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling. My chest ached as though something heavy was pressing against it. My mind screamed for action, but my body felt paralyzed. I could not confront her yet, not when so much of me wanted to deny what I already knew. That night, as I lay in bed beside her, I wondered what she dreamed about. Did she dream of him? Did she dream of walking hand in hand with him under the Parisian lights, while I rotted in silence at home? The thought burned so deeply that I wanted to shake her awake, to scream her name, to demand the truth right there and then. But again, I swallowed the storm. It was during those sleepless nights that my thoughts turned to Daniel. Memories of our childhood flooded me. The nights we stayed up talking about our futures, the secrets we shared, the promises we made to always have each other's backs. I remembered the way he stood beside me at my wedding, his hand on my shoulder as he whispered, "You are the luckiest man alive." Now I wondered if he meant it, or if he was already betraying me even then. I started watching him too. His patterns, his behavior. He was quieter than usual, distant, and when we met, his eyes never held mine for long. One afternoon, I invited him out for coffee. He hesitated before agreeing, and when we sat down, there was a silence between us that no words could fill. "How have you been?" I asked, forcing casualness into my tone. He shrugged, looking away. "Busy. Work, you know." His voice was strained, his hands restless. I studied him, every twitch, every pause, every swallow. He looked like a man carrying a secret too heavy for his soul. And I knew exactly what that secret was. But still, I did not confront him. Not yet. Because betrayal is not just about exposing the truth. It is about understanding the depth of it, the shape of it, the way it poisons every memory you once cherished. I needed to see how far it went. The answers came sooner than I expected. A week later, my wife received a package. She smiled when she opened it, her eyes glowing in a way I had not seen in years. It was a red dress. Elegant, beautiful, designed to turn heads. She tried to hide it quickly, folding it back into the box before I could look closer. But I saw enough. I saw the joy in her eyes, the excitement she could not contain. And that joy was not for me. That night I searched again. I opened her emails, scrolled through the messages, and there it was, Daniel had sent her the dress. He wrote, "Wear this in Paris. I want everyone to see how perfect you are." The rage that burned through me was unlike anything I had ever felt. My best friend was dressing my wife for their secret life together. He was planning her happiness while I drowned in silence. Still, I kept my mask on. I smiled at her the next morning, kissed her cheek, wished her a good day. And inside I planned. I planned not for revenge, not yet. I planned for clarity. For undeniable proof. Because the heart can still deceive itself, even when the evidence is there. And I wanted to strip away every last shred of denial until all that remained was the raw, unbearable truth. So I followed her again. This time I did not stay outside. I went inside the hotel. I walked past the lobby, past the elevators, my chest tight, my steps heavy. I did not know what I would do if I saw them. I only knew I had to see. When I reached the third floor, I heard laughter. Her laughter. And then his voice. My body froze. Their door was slightly ajar. I could have pushed it open. I could have walked in. But instead I stood there, listening, my soul being torn apart by the sound of their joy. I turned and walked away, my vision blurred, my heart shattered. That night, I could not look at her. I could not touch her. I lay beside her in silence, and for the first time, I felt like I was no longer her husband. I was just the obstacle standing between her and the man she truly wanted. Keep listening, because what I discovered next did not just break me, it revealed a secret about Daniel that changed everything I thought I knew about betrayal. The silence inside me became heavier than the noise of confrontation. I thought the night I heard their laughter behind that hotel door was the lowest point of my life, but it was only the beginning of a darker descent. I did not sleep anymore. I stared at the ceiling, listening to her soft breathing beside me, and I imagined every word, every touch, every stolen moment she shared with him. Sleep was impossible when betrayal lived in your bed. Days blurred into weeks. She was more radiant than ever, while I withered. She hummed songs while she cooked. She texted with a glow on her face. She left the house in clothes chosen carefully, as if she was dressing for an audience. And all the while, she looked at me with the casual ease of a woman who knew her lies were safe. But they were not safe. Not anymore. Because in my silence, I had begun to see patterns more clearly. Betrayal has a rhythm. It repeats itself like a haunting melody, and once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. She met him every Thursday. She left home at the same hour, always with the same excuse. She came back late, sometimes smelling of wine, sometimes with her hair slightly undone. I logged every detail, every excuse, every movement. Then something unexpected happened. Daniel reached out to me. Out of nowhere, after weeks of silence, he texted, "Can we talk?" I stared at the message for minutes, my mind racing. Was he finally going to confess? Or was this another trick, another lie carefully crafted to protect his secret? I agreed to meet him. We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. His eyes had dark circles, and his hands shook slightly as he stirred his coffee. For a moment, I almost pitied him. "How have you been?" he asked softly. "Fine," I lied. There was a long silence. He stared at the table, his jaw clenched. I waited, my heart pounding, until finally he spoke. "I need to tell you something," he whispered. "But I do not know how." My breath caught. This was it. The confession. The moment my suspicions would either explode into truth or dissolve into misunderstanding. But then he said something I never expected. "It is not what you think." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked at me, pain etched across his face. "Yes, I have been seeing her. But it is not love. It is not romance. It is complicated." I wanted to slam my fist on the table. I wanted to demand answers. But my voice came out low and trembling. "Complicated? You are sleeping with my wife, Daniel. What part of that is complicated?" His eyes filled with tears. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "She is not the woman you think she is. And there are things you do not know about her. Things I should have told you years ago." The cafe around us seemed to fade. My ears rang with his words. What could he possibly mean? She was my wife. I knew everything about her. Or at least I thought I did. "Explain," I demanded. He hesitated, rubbing his temples. "Back in college, before you two met, she and I were already close. Too close. We promised to keep it secret. When you came into her life, she told me it was over. I believed her. I stood aside because you were my best friend, and I wanted your happiness. But she came back to me. Again and again. Even after you married. I tried to stop it, but she. He swallowed hard. She knows how to pull me back in. The words hit me like a storm. She had been betraying me not for weeks, not for months, but for years. From the very beginning. Our marriage had been a stage, and I had been the audience, clapping for a performance scripted by lies. I could barely breathe. You are telling me, I said slowly, that she has been with you since before we were married? Daniel nodded, shame in his eyes. My entire body went cold. This was the second haunting question answered. The sudden distance between Daniel and me had not been about busyness. It had been about guilt, about carrying a secret so vile it poisoned his soul. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping against the floor. You disgust me, I hissed. You both do. I walked out before he could respond. My chest burned with rage, with betrayal so deep I thought it would consume me whole. That night, I looked at her differently. Not as my wife, not as the woman I had once loved, but as a stranger who had destroyed me with a smile. She was cheerful, talking about her busy week at work, while her eyes sparkled with the joy of a woman living two lives. And I realized something devastating. I had not lost her recently. I had never had her to begin with. The walls of our home felt like a prison. Every picture frame mocked me. Every memory felt fake. I began to hear my own thoughts whispering questions I could not silence. Who was I to her? Was I only a convenience? A mask she wore to appear respectable? Was our marriage nothing but a cover for her true desires? I started drinking more, staying out late, avoiding her. She noticed, but she did not press. Maybe she was relieved. Maybe she thought my distance gave her more freedom. Either way, she did not seem concerned. That hurt most of all. Not only had she betrayed me, but she no longer even feared losing me. One evening, I found myself outside Daniel's apartment. I did not plan to be there. My car just seemed to drive on its own. I sat in the darkness, staring at his window, imagining them together. My hands itched for violence. But then a strange thought crept in. What if Daniel had not told me everything? What if there was more to her lies, more than even he knew? That thought kept me from acting. Instead, I drove home, silent, broken, but determined. The next day, while she was at work, or at least pretending to be, I searched the house. I opened drawers, closets, cabinets. I looked under the bed, inside boxes, behind shelves. I did not know what I was searching for, only that my gut told me there was more. And I was right. In the back of our closet, inside an old shoebox, I found letters. Dozens of them, folded neatly, hidden beneath scarves. My hand shook as I opened the first one. It was from Daniel. Written years ago. Words of passion, of longing, of promises that should never have existed. Letters exchanged while she was already my wife. Letters that confirmed everything Daniel had confessed and more. I sat on the floor of our closet, surrounded by letters that documented years of betrayal. Every word was another nail in the coffin of my marriage. Every sentence was another crack in the foundation of the life I thought we had built together. When she came home that night, I could not look at her. I could not speak. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and went about her evening as if nothing was wrong. Meanwhile, I held the letters in my pocket, a secret weapon I was not yet ready to use. Because part of me still needed answers. Answers that only she could give. I waited until the weekend. We sat at the dining table, the silence between us heavy. I pulled out the letters and placed them in front of her. She froze, her face draining of color. Explain, I said quietly. She stared at the letters, her hands trembling. Then she looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw fear in her eyes. Please, she whispered. It is not what it looks like. I laughed bitterly. Not what it looks like. You have been lying to me for years. You have been with him behind my back since before we were married. And you expect me to believe there is more to this story? Her lips quivered. She looked down, then back at me. Yes. she said. There is more. I leaned forward, my heart pounding. Then tell me. Tell me everything. She hesitated, tears forming in her eyes. And then she said something that shattered me all over again. You were never supposed to find out. Because Daniel is not just Daniel. He is. She paused, her voice breaking. He is your brother. The room spun. My ears rang. My stomach dropped as if the ground had opened beneath me. My brother? I whispered. She nodded, sobbing now. Not by blood, but by truth. Daniel is your father's son. From another woman. He never told you. No one ever told you. But it is true. The world collapsed in a way I cannot describe. The betrayal was not just a matter of love or lust. It was a matter of blood, of family, of secrets buried so deep they had poisoned everything above them. I could not breathe. I could not think. I stood up, my chair crashing to the floor, and I stumbled into the night, the cold air hitting me like knives. My wife had not only betrayed me with my best friend. She had betrayed me with my own brother. Keep listening, because the final truth I uncovered next would not only destroy my marriage but would also force me to face a choice between revenge and survival that no heart should ever endure. The days that followed felt like walking inside a burning house where every wall was collapsing slowly, piece by piece, but I could not escape. My mind replayed every detail of my wife's betrayal, every line from those secret emails, every stolen glance between her and Daniel that I had once ignored. What ate me alive was not only the cheating, but the fact that I had trusted her with everything I had, my heart, my home, my future, and she had burned it without mercy. I started sleeping less. My nights became a battlefield of images where I saw her laughing in Paris with him, holding his hand in the streets of a city that I had once promised her we would explore together. My own promises were crushed by her lies. The Paris trip was not a business trip. Yet the third question remained inside me like a poison. Why had she chosen Daniel, of all people, the man I once called brother? The answer came slowly, in whispers, not in words spoken aloud but in fragments of their conversations that I uncovered. Daniel was not just a co-worker. He was a man who had secretly been competing with me for years, in ways I never saw. The promotions I got, the attention I earned, the stability I built with Sarah, it had fueled a quiet jealousy in him that he never admitted. And Sarah, vulnerable in her own dissatisfaction, had become a weapon in his hands. When I finally confronted her face to face, she looked at me with eyes filled with both guilt and defiance. She did not deny what she had done. Instead, she said something that tore me apart more than the betrayal itself. She told me she had felt invisible to me for a long time, that my focus on work and providing had made her feel like a shadow inside her own marriage. I stood there, my chest heavy with a storm of rage and grief, knowing that even if parts of her words carried truth, nothing could ever justify the way she had destroyed us. I asked her one question, one that I needed the courage to release from my throat. I asked her if she loved him. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. She lowered her head, and in that silence, I heard everything I feared. She had given her heart to a man I once trusted with my life. Revenge burned inside me, but at the same time, a strange sadness swallowed me whole. The idea of becoming like them, of lowering myself into their darkness, felt like another betrayal, this time to myself. I did not want to lose the last fragments of who I was. Still, I needed a resolution, something to bring this nightmare to an end. So I made my choice. I told her I was done. I told her that she had broken something that could never be fixed. I walked out of the house we had built together, and for the first time in my life, I felt both destroyed and free at the same time. The freedom was sharp, like glass under my skin, but it was freedom all the same. The truth about her Paris business trip had shattered me. But what I learned from it would stay with me forever. Betrayal is not only about losing love. It is about losing the version of yourself that believed love was unbreakable. It forces you to face the darkness in people, the hidden desires, the selfish choices, and it leaves scars that do not fade. I want you to stay with me here, because what I am about to say is the final truth that will make your heart stop for a moment. After months of distance, I discovered that their affair did not last. Daniel left her, and he did it cruelly, the same way he had once betrayed me. He had used her to hurt me, to win some invisible war that only he cared about, and once the game was over, he discarded her like broken glass. Sarah came back to me, begging, crying, asking for forgiveness, saying she had made the biggest mistake of her life. But I had already learned the hardest lesson of all: sometimes, love dies not with anger but with silence. I looked at her, and I realized I felt nothing anymore. No love, no hate, just emptiness. And that emptiness was more powerful than any revenge I could ever plan. So I walked away, truly this time, leaving behind both of them and everything tied to that betrayal. I rebuilt my life piece by piece, not for her, not to prove Daniel wrong, but for myself.